These new Mass Effect 5 hints that have dropped within the past 5 months all point to a 4-year time jump in the next game. Buckle up for 3 new Gamble tweets, some new interpretations for the latest N7-Day tease, and an explanation on why Liara's happiness is in the exact same boat as the Mass Effect 3 endings. Let's start with the most recent hint on BioWare's newest open position. Since March 6th of this year, BioWare has been hunting for a senior technical artist, and one of the qualifications for this role is very telling for the engine the next Mass Effect will use. It lists that the technical artist should have shipped at least one title using Unreal Engine 4 or 5. All of the original trilogy games were made using Unreal Engine, and the Legendary Edition was also shipped using Unreal Engine 3. Since the trilogy used Unreal Engine, it made it much easier to transfer saves from game to game, which made player choices carrying over very simple. Andromeda, however, used Frostbite, so even if they wanted choices to carry over, the engines not aligning made it that much harder to do so. So with this understanding of how engines help with choice carryover, it makes it more likely for our trilogy choices from the Legendary Edition to carry over into the next Mass Effect. I have a very in-depth video on how releasing the Legendary Edition was all part of a master plan to carry these choices over, but I won't go over that here. The main point about this position requiring Unreal Engine experience is that it makes it more likely for a shorter time jump from the end of Mass Effect 3. If the Mass Effect team wants our previous choices to matter, then they likely wouldn't choose to bamf forward 700 years to create a clean slate. And the reason I think our previous choices will matter in the next Mass Effect is partially because of our first new Gamble tweet. This Gamble tweet from January 3rd outright confirms the value he places on player choice. In response to a thread on the Paragon and Renegade dialogue system, Gamble said this: "Yes, it's true that more people played Paragon, but it would have been meaningless if Renegade had not existed. The ability to choose is stronger than the number of people playing any option, in my opinion." The executive producer for the next Mass Effect believes that the ability to choose is an essential component of choice-based games, which is music to my ears. To me, having the ability to choose is pretty meaningless unless those choices have consequences later down the line, which makes it even more likely that our Legendary Edition choices could feature in the latest Mass Effect. This doesn't come as a surprise either, considering in his blog post from N7-Day 2023, Gamble included the phrase, "the endings," in his list of questions that fans have about the next Mass Effect. So with this, it makes sense to assume a smaller time jump will take place, since a large time jump would basically eliminate the choices we've already made. Combining this with the Unreal Engine qualification requirement definitely gives more weight to the 4-year time jump theory. And to add even more weight to the theory, Gamble provided us with a very subtle tease on Liara's role in the next game. This Gamble tweet is from November 30th, 2024, and comes on the heels of last year's N7-Day. Gamble said that there were a lot more new fans in his mentions because the Legendary Edition went on a crazy sale. He then added that there's an extra game worth of DLC content in there, but emphasized that fans should make sure they play Lair of the Shadow Broker. When I first analyzed this with Calla Elizabeth last December, I thought this tweet meant that maybe the Yogs would play a larger role in the next Mass Effect. The original Shadow Broker that Liara supplanted was a member of the Yogs, which are basically a race as muscularly strong as the Krogan and as smart as the Solarians. Yogs had yet to discover spaceflight when the Reaper War began in Mass Effect 3, so likely the Reapers would have left them alone as the Yogs didn't yet join the larger galactic community. But while the Yogs being in the next Mass Effect might be a thing, I'm now thinking that Gamble was hinting at something much more obvious about the Shadow Broker DLC. That obvious part being that Liara became the new Shadow Broker by the end of that storyline. Since Liara is the only confirmed returning character in the next Mass Effect, it's likely that her role as Shadow Broker is going to be important for whatever transpires, which we've already heard evidence from in the relay tease.
Exactly. The Council will be furious, although they should know by now not to underestimate. I've seen in different lanes. How did we miss this? Was the most ridiculous.
Since Gamble already confirmed that Liara is still the Shadow Broker in this tweet, I think his new tweet provides a glimpse into why her being the broker is relevant 4 years after Mass Effect 3. In the relay tease, Liara saying "how did we miss this" in regards to a newfangled relay being built is very telling. She's not in Andromeda, since she also included that the Council would be furious. Andromeda, by design, is counselor-free to allow for a fresh start in a new galaxy. So with Liara still being in the Milky Way, a new relay being built points to a 4-year jump, since relay construction was tied to all the endings of Mass Effect 3. And even if this relay has nothing to do with the damaged relays from the endings, which I personally don't think it does, there's a second hint related to Liara's role as the Shadow Broker. When Liara says, "How did we miss this?" I interpret this as her still being a relatively young broker who might be prone to missing things, as opposed to an over 700-year-old broker with vast amounts of experience. So with this, Gamble reminding fans to play the DLC where Liara became the Shadow Broker in the first place makes a 4-year time jump even more likely. Alright, it's time for the most relevant tease in the past 5 months, which of course dropped on last year's N7 Day. And that relevant tease is tied to Shepard's likely return. Once December comes around this year, it'll mark 5 years since the original Shepard tease dropped during the Game Awards. I'm not going to go over the unhinged theory on how that tease might work here, but we do have to discuss the Shepard tease from 4 months ago, because like I mentioned in a few videos now, this past year's N7 Day tease likely showed the return of Shepard in AI form. To understand how this helps us figure out the timeline of the next Mass Effect, let's make a Venn diagram. On one end, let's put the 4-year jump, and on the other, the over 700-year jump. I'll also include 2 other circles for the Milky Way and Andromeda, which overlap with the time periods, since the setting of the next Mass Effect is probably tied to the timeline. Now let's try and put some of the most relevant teases we've gotten so far in these categories, to ultimately figure out why a Shepard AI makes sense with a 4-year jump. The most obvious tease has been Liara's confirmation, which, because of her longevity, would place her right in the middle of the diagram. The next relevant tease has been the Geth's involvement. Since the Geth weren't involved in Andromeda, I'm going to place them in the Milky Way circle. After that, we got the relay tease, where Liara name-dropped the Council, once again making it a Milky Way tease. That same year, we also got a couple illustrations that closely resemble the locations of Ilium and Thessia, once again, more Milky Way locations. And in 2023, we also got new art of a location with a lot of diverse races, along with a Geth and an Angara. Again, because the Geth didn't go to Andromeda, and since there's only one Angaran, this leans more to the Milky Way than Andromeda. Alright, it's time for the most obvious and relevant teases. The constant N7 hints, and the Shepard hints. I'll separate them for now, even though I think both N7 teases have been related to Shepard anyway. For the N7 hints, it's definitely specific to the Milky Way, because the Systems Alliance, which umbrellas the N7 program, did not go to Andromeda. And finally, the Shepard teases. In previous deep dives, I've analyzed how Shepard returning in whatever capacity likely wouldn't happen 700 years after their death. The cryopod theories of Shepard being frozen en route to Andromeda could technically work. However, with this Venn diagram, it makes it incredibly unlikely. Since pretty much every tease shows that Andromeda will not likely be the primary setting, the cryopod theories to me seem much less likely. And as I covered in the Reapers Were Right video, the Alliance jumping at the opportunity to make a Shepard AI only 4 years after the Reaper War seems pretty likely. With the Reapers no longer being the baddies, or completely destroyed, and assuming Shepard doesn't survive in Perfect Destroy, the Alliance replicating their top soldier in AI form would actually make for a really relevant storyline in today's AI-centered world. So with this potential Shepard AI tease, regardless of if AU shenanigans are involved, it probably makes the 4-year time jump even more likely. And with all this talk of the teases from 4 months ago, I also wanted to bring up a tease from N7 Day I hadn't managed to interpret until now. On November 7th last year, we received 3 pieces of armor in the Veilguard, with one of them being the command helmet. In the description, it lists the helmet as having an accentuated stripe the color of blood, which serves as a reminder of the lost. At first, I wasn't sure what this connected to, but I found a sneakily hidden bit of lore in the art of Mass Effect that explains what this means. In the book, it lists that in Mass Effect 1, The N7's red stripe represents the human blood Shepard must sacrifice to stop Saren Arterius. And in the tease last year, it also references blood, but in the context of serving as a reminder of those who were lost. Besides this blood stripe on the helmet, again being a Shepard-related tease, I view this as having two broader interpretations for the next Mass Effect. The first is that if strange AU stuff happens, or time travel wackiness, or something similar that could mess with fans' headcanons, that it won't be done lightly. This direct nod to the Lost, to me, means that if they bring characters back from the dead, it's not for simple cameos or fan service, but for a reason. Reminder of the Lost could reference the squadmates who perished due to our actions from the trilogy, which again points to our choices mattering in the next Mass Effect. If this is the correct interpretation, then the 4-year time jump is still looking good. Honestly, as long as we avoid arcs like somehow Palpatine returned, if any characters return, I'd be happy. That being said, there is another interpretation of this, which is much less hopeful than this one. The second meaning could be that the next Mass Effect is about loss and moving on, a theory that Cal Elizabeth strongly believes in, and one that gives me a lot of anxiety. Since this is a relatively minor tease compared to the ones we put in the Venn diagram, I'm hoping the scales tipping much more towards the Milky Way and 4-year time jump side make this one relatively harmless. But of course, I wanted to bring it up because all interpretations and theories at this point are very valid. Alright, I've saved the final and best hint for last, which is a Gamble tweet that puts Liara's happiness in the same boat as the Mass Effect 3 endings. 5 months ago, Gamble was tweeting up a storm right before the Veilguard released, and during that tweet storm, he dropped this gem. In response to Black Ops 6 not having multiple endings, Gamble quote tweeted, "We like multiple endings," with "we" likely referring to BioWare. And in response to if those endings are happy, Gamble said, "Depends." If you've been following Gamble's tweeting shenanigans, this very closely resembles another tweet he made, specifically about Liara's happiness. When asked if Liara is happy all these years later, Gamble said that her happiness also depends. So with this, we have to ask ourselves, what links both Liara's happiness and BioWare's love of multiple endings? The easy answer is us. The choices that we specifically make with Liara, the final moments of Mass Effect 3, and even in the Veilguard's endgame, all come down to our specific choices, which once again makes it even more likely that a 4-year jump is going to happen, linking our trilogy choices to whatever happens in the next Mass Effect. Now, obviously, theorizing about a 4-year time jump is one thing, but we have to address the elephant in the room. A 4-year time jump in the Milky Way would mean that the vastly different outcomes of the Mass Effect 3 endings have to be addressed. How in the good name of Khaleesa bint Sinan al-Jilani can all endings be acknowledged in the next game, instead of simply handled with a large time jump? I'm not 100% sure how the Mass Effect team might do it, but you can watch this video next to see how I attempted to solve the endings in 3 simple steps. See you there.